After meeting with President Trump, Gavin Newsom has a disaster interview on CNN. Also, Kash Patel and his confirmation vote has been put on hold. And President Trump makes a major announcement about taxes. All of these stories and more in this video. But let's start with what Gavin Newsom had to say about President Trump.
So you spoke to President Trump for more than an hour. Yeah. Tell us about that meeting. How did it go?
He was very gracious to accept the meeting in very short order. We extended an open hand. I've said this often, not a closed fist, and reestablished a partnership and relationship to this fire, to the emergency that's still at hand as it relates to toxic materials that need to be cleaned up, to debris removal, to people, thousands and thousands of families whose lives have been torn asunder. And so it was incredibly productive.
Did you get any commitments from him for aid?
Broad strokes, not specific commitments, but broad strokes. And I have just all the confidence in the world that it's going to be a strong partnership moving forward. Look, cameras have moved on. And the devastation now is truly being absorbed.
Well, first things first, his tone has definitely changed. Now, remember, it was just, a month ago, he sounded very combative, like he was willing to go to war with President Trump. And now he wants to collaborate with him. And what does that show you? That politics is a game, that all they do is they say one thing and do another. That's why President Trump is the ultimate disruptor, including the rest of his cabinet, because we're talking about individuals who are going to do exactly what he says to do. And that's why there's so much panicking happening within the federal government and the Democratic Party, including the media. Now, here he is talking about Trump's conditions to disaster aid, which includes voter ID.
As you know, that President Trump has pressed for California requiring voter ID and changing to the water system. Did that come up with your meeting with him?
We talked about both, yeah.
You talked about both? And did you say you would?
We've been in an ongoing conversation for over, I feel like I told the president when he was on the tarmac last week in Los Angeles, I said, we're picking up on the last conversation we had around water 4.5 years prior. So I will say this, he's very focused on that issue. He certainly targeted some of that in terms of some of the actions he took by executive order.
2 billion gallons of water.
And so we had and that's why it was an extended conversation. I didn't even know people knew how long the conversation was, but it was an extended conversation. And so it was spirited.
All right, well, in other words, that means they didn't get anywhere, okay? President Trump isn't stupid. He sees the results in what has happened to California. Gavin Newsom's been in charge since 2011. People, lieutenant governor, then governor. What has he actually accomplished? Well, I'm of the opinion that he hasn't accomplished much because he's been more focused on homelessness and the failed high-speed rail project. Now, he also had to speak about Pacific Palisades and the time it's going to take to rebuild. And let's just say his answers are not what you would want to hear if you live in that area.
You previously mentioned the timeline for rebuilding would be 6 to 9 months. Is that going to happen? And should people rebuild in some parts of California, given how high the fire risk is?
Yeah, you can't rebuild the same. So we have to rebuild with science. We have to build with climate reality in mind. We have to look at infrastructure, redundancy, systems, ingress, egress as it relates to emergency management and planning, materials. All of that is being reviewed and reconsidered, and with the latest iterations in terms of understanding and technology. And I say technology in the context of how, again, we build the infrastructure to keep it safe, to address undergrounding of lines, how we address the larger issues of redundancy in terms.
Okay, I'm not too sure I understood anything that he was saying, except some key words that he said there in the beginning, is that we're going to have to rebuild with science in mind and that we have to build with climate reality in mind. Now, climate reality is a new buzzword that he is, I guess, choosing to use instead of saying climate change, which I know that's what he means. And the fact of the matter is these homeowners, they care less about climate change at this point. They want to be able to rebuild, or they just want to move on with their lives, right? 6 to 9 months is a long time. So in the end, I don't think he really accomplished much. And I think this is all for show to make it look like he's actually trying to do something for California. And that's my own personal opinion. Now, what is not for show is what the Senate Democrats have decided to do. And that is Kash Patel's confirmation vote has been delayed until next week. Yes, they're continuing to slow walk Trump's nominations. This is only going to lead to more problems, but let's first hear this announcement and then we will talk about it.
Moments ago, the Senate Judiciary Chairman Chuck Grassley announcing that the committee vote for FBI Director nominee Kash Patel is delayed until next week, and he is criticizing his Democratic colleagues for dragging their feet. Listen here.
The Democrats are establishing a double standard by forcing us to meet this morning Last Congress, Republicans routinely required the committee to meet in person, did not require the committee to meet in person, just to hold over nominations. Republicans extended this courtesy at least 17 times last Congress, even when very controversial nominees were on the agenda. But now that Republicans are in the majority, Democrats on this committee are not extending the same practice to us. Our committee works best when both sides uphold norms.
Grassley told us yesterday on America Reports that the vote in the committee for Kash Patel would be a week from today, but making it official this morning in the committee, Ranking Member Dick Durbin responding, saying that he wanted a second hearing. Some discussion about all of this still going on, but the headline, the committee is going to vote on Kash Patel next Thursday. Dana?
For clarification purposes, there are two votes that need to happen. First is the committee itself, okay? And then after that, it's the Senate. Now, the problem here is you can't do the Senate without the committee, and the committee hasn't voted yet, which means he's not even in a position to be confirmed at this point. And the argument that the Democrats are making is this.
At his committee hearing, Mr. Patel said all FBI employees will be protected against political retribution. We said, great, okay. Yet just hours later, the administration forced out 8 of the Bureau's most senior career, let's say that again, career public servants who serve in nonpartisan roles. One day later, an email was sent to FBI employees requesting a list of everyone who had worked on January 6 cases, quote, to determine whether any additional personnel actions are necessary, end quote. So you just get assigned to a case. You're a brand new agent, or maybe you've been there and you have a specialty working on certain types of cases. You get assigned and now you're on this list. Seems a little bit reminiscent to the list that Kash Patel has at the end of his book. This could sweep up and will sweep up agents that are just doing their jobs. The FBI director's loyalty must be to the American people, to the Constitution, and to the rule of law. But Mr. Patel has made it clear that his loyalty is to the president.
All right, well, the issue here that they have is credibility. You cannot use the excuse that Kash Patel potentially will prosecute Trump's political opponents when that's exactly what Merrick Garland did. Not to mention he did raid the president's home against the advice of the DOJ and other FBI officials. They did not want to do that, but it was Merrick Garland that obviously made the final decision to do it. So at the end of the day, that's not something that they can use as an excuse.
These are scary times. And then to find out, they talk about, oh, we're so concerned about the FBI and the DOJ having been weaponized during the Biden years. If anybody is weaponizing these two agencies, it's the people who are about to take over. And I note that the Pam Bondi, she just created a weaponizing task force. What the heck is that?
Well, respectfully, I think she's one of the dumbest individuals in Congress for making that statement. Okay, she knows that is 110% false. Of course, the justice system was weaponized under Joe Biden. That's why voters voted the way that they did.
2 quick things, one on judgment and one on candor. Some clown posted a video of Kash Patel chainsawing the heads off people who were on his enemies list in his book. You can't really blame Patel for that. The world is full of creepy people who might do things like that, except for the fact that Kash Patel himself reposted that imagery to his Truth Social account. He now owns that. Setting aside how grotesque that is, the idea that a man with the kind of judgment that he thinks it's okay to repost imagery of himself chainsawing his political enemies, not appropriate for an FBI director.
And while they're so obsessed with Kash Patel at this point and slowing down Trump's nominees, you know what President Trump is focused on? Getting results for the American people, which is why he had a meeting today with Republican lawmakers to make sure the tax cuts get passed. And exactly what do those tax cuts actually look like? Well, here is the White House press secretary sharing that with the media.
So these are the tax priorities of the Trump administration that the president has laid out for members in that meeting today. No tax on tips, which is obviously a very public campaign promise that the president made. No tax on seniors' Social Security. No tax on overtime pay. Renewing President Trump's 2017 middle-class tax cuts. Again, these are the president's priorities. Adjusting the SALT cap, eliminate all the special tax breaks for billionaire sports team owners, close the carried interest tax deduction loophole, tax cuts for Made in America products. This will be the largest tax cut in history for middle-class working Americans. The president is committed to working with Congress to get this done.
Now, these priorities, they are huge. If he could get these passed into law, I think that would go a long way as it pertains to his legacy, but more importantly, how much impact financially this would have on everyday Americans. And remember, the Democratic Party prides themselves on being all about the working class, but have yet to ever see any of them propose this over the past decade. Just think about that for a second. It took a Republican to bring this up. And that's just sad, especially when you're talking about seniors and Social Security. That's a no-brainer right there. Overtime pay, that's amazing, because the biggest expense for all businesses out there is what? Wages. And for the progressives out there, well, the billionaires need to pay their fair share, eliminating special tax breaks for billionaire sports teams owners. I mean, will that satisfy you or not? Now, of course, I know the answer to that. It's no, because again, the entire base is so up in arms about Elon Musk.
Elon Musk crashes and breaks everything he buys. He thinks he can buy our government. We cannot allow him to crash and break our air traffic control system. Look at what happened when he bought Twitter. It just started crashing. Again, not a big deal if your app doesn't open one day. It is a really big deal if Americans don't know whether or not their air safety is protected. So this is, again, another instance where Elon Musk thinks he knows better than everybody else in the world. In fact, he doesn't know anything about how to make sure air traffic control works. He doesn't know anything about how to make sure that our Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid payments get out to folks on time. He just knows that he wants to find a way to make money off of this at the expense of other people's safety. Anybody else on air?
Again, their biggest problem is they're focusing on the wrong things. Right now, this is a losing battle for them. I mean, think about the optics here. Once they come out and continue to go line by line, telling the American people where their tax dollars have been going, the American people are going to look at people like him and say, what are you doing? Why are you complaining about the guy who was willing to finally tell us the truth? That's number one. Number two, will Elon Musk be able to financially benefit off whatever he's doing? What evidence do we have of that at this point? We have none. So these are baseless claims at this point, and it's a waste of energy.
So I just want to go back, though. Would you be okay? Because it is unprecedented what Elon Musk is doing. I know you say it's not a surprise, but it is. I mean, we have not seen the world's richest man come in and go agency to agency with his staffers, they're all unelected and have access to these sensitive programs. Would you be okay if Democrats did this? If a George Soros came in with his staffers and did the same thing that Elon Musk is doing? Would you accept that?
Well, what's unprecedented is spending our taxpayer dollars on left-wing partisan political projects all over the globe. That's what the American people are focused on. This is a result of this election. This is a result of President Trump getting a very clear mandate from the American people to get rid of this kind of nonsense from our federal government. And we're doing it more efficiently than it's ever been done before. And again, the fury that we're seeing from the other side of the aisle isn't about this waste. It's not about paying for left-wing activism on the other side of the globe. It's that it's being exposed finally. And that's what the American people want.
That is exactly what the American people want. But there's only one problem. The Democratic Party, they don't believe that. They believe the American people want a mass invasion into this country of people who are unvetted. They believe that the American people want DEI programs running rampant. That the American people want foreign wars that never end. This is what the Democratic Party is all obsessed about, that Elon Musk is taking over democracy and he's the actual president. They believe that's what voters believe. Again, it's out of touch. Now, a great example of that is Hillary Clinton. For some reason, she felt the need to inject herself in this debate about DOGE. She started going after Secretary Duffy, who's in charge of transportation on X. I just don't think she was ready for what would come after. Now, this kicked off when Secretary Duffy put this post up here. Big news. Talk to the DOGE team. They're going to plug in to help upgrade our aviation system. Sounds common sense to me, given that DOGE has one of the smartest, if not brightest, and advanced people, software engineers, a part of the team. And we know that the aviation system is just out of date. However, Hillary Clinton said this: they have no relevant experience. Most of them aren't old enough to rent a car. And you're going to let them mess with airline safety that's already deteriorating on your watch. And of course, Secretary Duffy said this: Madam Secretary, with all due respect, experienced Washington bureaucrats are the reason our nation's infrastructure is crumbling. You need to sit this one out. And she wouldn't let up. She continued to say this: U.S. airlines had gone 16 years without fatal crashes. Then MAGA fired the FAA chief, gutted the Aviation Security Advisor Committee, and then threatened air traffic controllers with layoffs. Now there have been 2 fatal crashes. Hope your unvetted 22-year-olds fix things fast. And then he ended up saying this, which I think is the nail in the coffin for her. I know you're lashing out because DOGE is uncovering your family's obscene grifting via USAID, but I won't let you lie and distort facts. The FAA administrator announced he resigned over a month before Trump took office, and the air traffic controllers were always exempt from Trump's civil service buyouts. The previous administration shamelessly used the Department of Transportation as a slush fund for the Green New scam, throwing away money and resources on wasteful environmental and social justice projects rather than updating our nation's adequate air traffic control systems and other critical infrastructure. I'm returning this department to its mission of safety by using innovative technology in transportation and infrastructure. Your team had its chance and failed. We're moving on without you because the American people want us to make America's transportation system great again. And yes, we're bringing the 22-year-olds with us. Now, Sean Duffy's daughter also piped in. She said, just a PSA, my dad would never commit suicide. And that's just something that you don't want to see, of course. But guys, this is just another great example of how the Democrats, they just can't help themselves. They inject themselves in conversations that they're always going to lose on. And you know who actually was able to explain this point very nicely? That is none other than Scott Jennings. Listen to this.
Let me just read this from Ron Fournier, Smart Voice. He talks about the risks for Democrats. He says, overheated or faux outrage in defense of unpopular institutions is out of step with these times. Even for those voters repelled by Trump's machinations, there's often something appealing in the change he espouses, if not with popular policy like sealing the U.S. border, often with the general direction of disruption. Democrats would be wiser to position themselves as reformers.
He's describing what is currently the dumbest strategy in politics, which is Democrats taking the 20% side of every 80-20 issue in America. USAID, people want this pared down. They want it streamlined. They want to know where the money is going. Democrats have a meltdown. Today, Donald Trump signs executive order on keeping boys out of girls' sports. Democrats take the 20 side of that issue as well. All these issues, this is like Trump's superpower, finding a bunch of 80-20 issues, getting on the 80, and everybody who's sort of reflexively against him gets on the 20. And now the Democratic Party has like a 31% approval rating. This is why.
Now, if you're just an American who really isn't that much into politics, you just want the people in Washington to get results. You care less which party is really in charge. The problem, though, is that on both sides of the aisle, you'll find everybody overreacting and not actually focusing on the American people. And that's why what President Trump is doing is really historic, in my opinion, especially with those tax cuts and also that executive order to keep men out of women's sports, because he's listening to what voters have said that they wanted. Now, just to show you why what Scott Jennings was so on point, watch this poll that CNN puts up about how Americans really feel about men playing in women's sports.
I think these numbers are really illuminating on this topic because I just think there's such a clear trend among the American public. So transgender female athletes in women's sports, only 18% of the country says that they should be, in fact, allowed to participate in women's sports. Compare this to the opposition. I mean, my goodness gracious, 79%. You rarely get 79% of the country to agree on anything, but they do, in fact, agree on the idea of opposing transgender female athletes in women's sports. But it's not just the here and now, Laura. It's not just the here and now. What we're actually seeing is a trend on this particular issue, and it's going in the direction of opposition. So take a look here. Okay, transgendered female athletes, and amongst those Americans who oppose them in women's sports. Back in 2021, it was 62%. A majority, but, you know, not anywhere close to a ginormous majority, right? A clear majority, but not a ginormous majority. But then again, you look here in 2025, you see it at 79%. So it's not just that the majority of Americans are opposed to transgender female athletes in women's sports. It's that the opposition has become considerably larger in just the last 4 years.
Now, what's unfortunate is the Democratic Party will see those numbers, but they will continue to make the same mistake and focus on that 20%. And why is that? Because I don't think they've learned yet. I think they are so stuck in this habit of doubling down on identity politics that that's all they know. They don't know another way to communicate their message. And that's why they're continuing to sound just like Carrie Champion, who moments later after Scott Jennings said what he said, she blames the election on white supremacy.
Democrats also need to not make their whole personality hating Donald Trump. Like, people have a set position of Donald Trump. At this point, you're not really, that cannot be your leading effort. But they also, I feel like, are constantly running and messaging on what they want voters to care about, not what voters actually care about. So whether it's democracy, whether it's to some degree reproductive rights, that just was not the defining issue of this election, rather than, oh, it's pocketbook issues, it's the cost of living, it's border security.
It's not pocketbook issues. I don't want to interrupt you. I thought it was about eggs. Right. We're not talking about
it's not
eggs
about,
anymore.
It's not about
it was
eggs.
never about eggs.
Yeah.
It was about race. And if we're honest, if I see something, say something. We've been told that since we were kids. If you see something, say something. It's not about eggs.
It is.
It's not about. It's not. It's about making sure that there is white supremacy in this country. And if we're honest, we will say that.
Now, looking to debate someone who thinks this way is really a waste of your time. Okay, because she's an individual who could care less about the opposing view. She only sees it this way. And that's really unfortunate that people in this country really believe that that was the reason that the Democrats lost the election. And again, it just proves that these people are so far removed from reality that they don't even know it. All right, so let's get you guys' answers in the comment section below to this particular question. I showed you the back and forth between Hillary Clinton and Sean Duffy. I want to know, what do you think about that? What would be your message to Hillary Clinton directly? If she was going to read it, what would you want to say to her based on what you've seen from that exchange? Let me know in the comment section below. Now, as you guys have seen throughout this video, it's clear that the Democrats are focusing on the wrong thing, but not Pam Bondi, our new Attorney General. She has already put the notice out for sanctuary cities that if they continue to hinder or prevent Tom Homan and ICE agents from deporting illegal aliens, they will be defunded. Now, if you missed that story and others from last night, all you have to do is click on that video because it's coming up right now.